Pharaoh's Servant was the fourth set in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Trading card game, released in 2002. Pharaoh's Servant was the debut for powerful cards like Thousand Eyes Restrict, Jinzo, and Imperial Order to the game. Pharaoh's Servant made it easier than ever to revive your monsters with Premature Burial and Call of the Haunted, or burn away your opponent's life points with Ceasefire. While many of these cards were meta-defining, and any that weren't banned saw play for way longer than a normal card typically does in the case of Jinzo, looking through this set, I noticed that it didn't have as many nostalgic cards as the previous three so far. That being said, I was able to get at least 15 cards I really liked from the set and narrow it down to that magic number 10 that all list videos tend to lean toward, probably for the algorithm more than anything. But without further ado, let's get into my top 10 favorite cards in Pharaoh's Servant. And first up on the list at number 10 is Twin-Headed Fire Dragon. Twin-Headed Fire Dragon is a fire, level 6, pyro normal monster with 2200 attack and 1700 defense, whose flavor text reads, 2 dragons fused as one from the effects of the Big Bang. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that this is one of the few Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards that mentions a hit TV show that may or may not be seen as kinda cringe. The things I like so much about this card is, 1, that I'm very privy to liking higher statted monsters, 2, it's a card I remember super vividly, and the fact that since it references the literal beginning of the universe, that explains why it looks so simple and almost primordial in its artwork. I just realized something. This guy is red and blue, so do you think if I put on an old pair of 3D glasses, it'll pop out of the card? Yo, that's some early augmented reality ass right there. They were really ahead of their time, which makes sense since this is a monster that apparently was created just as the entire universe was as well. Other than mostly nostalgia, this one isn't my absolute favorite monster in Pharaoh's Servant, so I decided to have it occupy the lowest spot. And our number 9 spot is Premature Burial. Premature Burial is an equipped spell card which reads, activate this card by paying 800 life points, then target one monster in your graveyard, special summon that target in attack position, and equip it with this card. When this card is destroyed, destroy the equipped monster. Busted card alert. As our only currently banned card on the list, Premature Burial has a lot going for it in terms of how broken it is. For one, no once per turn on its effect, but that's standard in early Yu-Gi-Oh! For another, it's an equipped spell card, one of the most heavily supported subtypes of spell cards, so it can be easily searched out. And finally, its effect specifically states that it has to be destroyed for the monster to be destroyed as well. So if you bounce this card back to the hand, you get to keep the monster on the field, then reactivate Premat to revive another monster. Theoretically, if you could keep doing this, you'd have infinite fodder for all sorts of combos. I never saw its broken potential while playing it with my brother and friends in high school, but it still was powerful enough to be played in every deck I made, basically as another copy of Monster Reborn with downsides, at least in our super scrubby format. It's not as nostalgic for me as a lot of the others on the list, since I only remember having this card in high school once I actually started learning and playing the game, so I never had it as a smaller child, and for that reason, it makes a lower spot on the list. And at our 8th spot is Call of the Haunted. Call of the Haunted is a continuous trap card which says, activate this card by targeting one monster in your graveyard. Special summon that target in attack position. When this card leaves the field, destroy that monster. When that monster is destroyed, destroy this card. Damn, I'm getting all the revival cards out of the way early, huh? Even though this card is easily worse than Premature Burial, I've always liked it slightly more, just for the fact that I like its artwork more. To be honest, they could have switched places, but damn it, it's my list, so I could do what I please. Even if it is worse than Premat, it did still see play in older formats, even being on the Forbidden and Limited list at a point in its history. Nowadays, it's way too power crept in the meta to see any type of competitive play. You can tell it's an old card by the way that the monster must be destroyed to destroy this card. So if the monster leaves the field in any other way, Call of the Haunted will just stay on the field, taking up valuable real estate in your spell and trap zone, being as useless as Elon Musk buying Twitter. Call of the Haunted, while not really playable anymore, still remains in my heart as one of my favorite cards in the set. And at lucky number 7 is Limiter Removal. Limiter Removal is a quick play spell card whose effect reads, double the attack of all machine monsters you currently control until the end of this turn. During During the end phase of this turn, destroy those monsters. God, I need this, but for my brain. I'm pretty sure they made a movie about that. Anyway, this card, I don't think needs any explanation on how powerful it was once the GX set started coming out. I never realized until making this video that limiter removal came out this early in the game, since it really was popular a little later on. But man, was it a menace when it was played, being on the FNL list for quite a bit at one point, not only for its raw OTK potential, but the fact that it's a quick play spell card, meaning it can be activated both proactively and defensively. It's made a lasting legacy on the game to the point that if I face a machine-focused deck in Master Duel, I still kind of get ready for this thing to end my existence, even if it no longer sees play, at least in general. I do still see it though, so it's a testament to how much players love this card. And obviously I love it too, since it makes the number 7 spot on my list. And at number 6 is Thousand Eyes Restrict. Thousand Eyes Restrict is a dark level 1 spellcaster fusion effect monster with 0 attack and 0 defense, which requires Relinquished plus Thousand Eyes Idol as materials to be fusion summoned, and whose effect says, other monsters on the field cannot change their battle positions or attack. Once per turn, you can target one monster your opponent controls, equip that target to this card, max 1. This card's attack and defense become equal to that equipped monster's. If this card would be destroyed by battle, destroy that equipped monster instead. This motherfucker was and still can be one of the best instant fusion targets ever printed. Like, it was banned for a long time, since it was not only an oppressive floodgate, but removal and easily accessible from the extra deck, since there's no restrictions on how it can be summoned. I really like its artwork too, being super badass and eldritch as hell. It played a prominent role in the final duel that Yugi had against Pegasus in the first season of the anime, being Pegasus's final boss monster. It's cool, it's powerful, it's nostalgic, it's iconic, and it's one of my favorite cards in Pharaoh's Servant. And at about halfway through the list, at number 5 is Gearfried the Iron Knight. Gearfried the Iron Knight is an Earth level 4 warrior effect monster with 1800 attack and 1600 defense, whose effect reads, if either player equips an equipped card or cards to this card, destroy that equipped card or cards. Talk about a nostalgia bomb for me. I get the same feeling seeing Gearfried that I do when seeing Dark Magician, so you know I had this card for a while. Plus, he was pretty tough for a level 4 monster back in the day, being at 1800 attack, but also boasting a sizable 1600 defense. This set is when more monsters were getting the proper levels for their stats, as far as I've noticed. Even in the previous set, Spell Ruler, this guy would have probably been a level 5 if I had to guess. This guy is also just badass as hell with sleek and angular iron armor. Another thing I learned from watching many videos about Yu-Gi-Oh on YouTube is that Gearfried was involved in an Exodia FTK alongside Royal Magical Library and Butterfly Dagger Elma. You'd get both Gearfried and RML on the field. Keep equipping Butterfly Dagger Elma to Gearfried. It would destroy itself, then add itself back to your hand, and boom, infinite loop of spell cards to use, so you can keep drawing off of Royal Magical Library's effect until you found all 5 pieces of Exodia. Since Butterfly Dagger Elma was banned, this loop is no longer possible. I never knew about this combo back in the day, since I never even owned all the pieces of Exodia to begin with, and I was never a Yu-Gi-Oh aficionado per se. All in all, Gearfried the Iron Knight is a solid contender right in the middle of the list for my favorite cards in the set. And at number 4 is Morphing Jar number 2. Morphing Jar number 2 is an Earth level 3 rock flip effect monster with 800 attack and 700 defense, with an effect that says, flip, shuffle all monsters on the field into the deck. Then, each player excavates cards from the top of their deck until they excavate the same number of monsters they shuffled into their main deck. Special summon all excavated level 4 or lower monsters in face down defense position. Also, send the remaining cards to the graveyard. Yo, I've never played competitively, but this thing was a goddamn menace in Yu-Gi-Oh! 5D's decade duels. As one of the many formerly broken jar cards, Morphing Jar number 2 was used in many empty jar decks and as just a complete game changer in many others. This landed at a spot on the ban list for years. Nowadays, it's one of the few problem jar cards that is completely unlimited, and it sees no play, mainly because flip monsters are considered generally too slow for the current meta. But coupled with the nostalgia of it from when I was in high school playing decade duels on my Xbox 360, I also just love the artwork of all the jar cards, being both silly and honestly creepy as hell. Like, imagine if you're in fucking Home Depot or something, you're walking by a pot in the gardening section and you see this face staring back at you. Clean up an aisle poo, am I right? but I also love how the effect matches the wackiness of the artwork, being super unique, especially for the time. Morphing Jar number 2 definitely deserves a high spot on the list, and at number 3 is Jinzo. Whoa. Did someone see that glitch? Jinzo is a dark level 6 machine effect monster with 2400 attack and 1500 defense, whose effect reads, trap cards and their effects on the field cannot be activated. Negate all trap effects on the field. How can anyone not like this guy? Well, okay, maybe Labyrinth players, and Eldritch players, and Floodgate players. So yeah, this guy has surprisingly seen some play for super long after it was released, randomly popping up throughout the game's history. And I can't blame anyone, from his solid stats for 1 tribute, to its super oppressive Floodgate effect, to one of the hardest artworks in the history of Yu-Gi-Oh! Not to mention the effect being so short and sweet, coupled with Jinzo's menacing and deadpan stare directly at the player. It screams, don't f with me. This guy would definitely be a psychic type monster if he came out after the type dropped, since in the anime he was the ace monster of the so-called psychic duelist Esperoba, at least until Joey took it right out of his cheating little hands and used it to great effect for the rest of the Battle City arc. To many people, this guy would be their favorite card in the set, and maybe ever, but just because he's not number 1 for me, doesn't mean I don't still f***ing love this guy. He is at number 3 after all, which is a pretty high spot. And our runner-up spot at number 2 is Wingweaver. Wingweaver is a light, level 7 fairy normal monster with 2750 attack and 2400 defense, whose description reads, a 6-winged fairy who prays for peace and hope. Now you may be asking yourself, why, of all cards in the set, I chose a vanilla monster with no significance to the game or the anime? Well, I've always loved ancient, primordial, eldritch, and divine things in fiction. So Wingweaver being an essentially biblically accurate angel with 6 wings definitely drew me in even as a kid. But as a kid, I was honestly more impressed with its really good stats for a level 7, being quite a bit stronger than even the Dark Magician himself. So with a surprising victory over Jinzo of all cards, I really must have a nostalgic spot for this fairy, enough to make it the runner-up on the list even. And at number 1 on the list of my 10 favorite Pharaohsservant cards goes to Buster Blader, baby. Buster Blader is an Earth, level 7 warrior effect monster with 2600 attack and 2300 defense, with an effect that reads, gains 500 attack for each dragon monster your opponent controls or is in their graveyard. I can't even begin to describe my feelings on this monster. It was an absolute staple in my arsenal of Yu-Gi-Oh cards I took everywhere with me as a child. Even in high school, when I legitimately started dueling with my friends, I used this guy if I faced off against one of their dragon decks, alongside Dark Magician and Polymerization to create the all-powerful Dark Paladin, which to this day is a contender of my favorite monsters ever printed. But Buster Blader is such a badass, looking super formidable and being even stronger than Yugi's ace. In the anime, Slifer the Sky Dragon was considered a dragon-type monster, so Buster Blader's effect was relevant against strings in the 2nd season. From the nostalgia factor, to the artwork, to its stats, to its anime appearances, I, along with many others I'm sure, really believe that Buster Blader belongs at the top of the list of my favorite cards in Pharaoh's Servant. Well folks, from the fun to the badass, all of the cards on this list hold a special place in my heart. So that's it for my time, guys. Remember to like the video, subscribe if you're new here to become a scrub-scriber, because that's what I call my subscribers, and also make sure to comment down below which cards that you like the most in Pharaoh's Servant. And I will see you guys next time.